Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. If you're a Yankees fan, you've probably heard of Bronx Pinstripes. If not, you should. It's an online community for Yankee fans, and my next guest is Andrew. He's a contributing writer for Bronx Pinstripes. He's also co-host of the very popular Yankees podcast, and he's here to talk with us now. Hi, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
James, thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Fellow Yankee fan, fellow, media podcaster type. And people can follow you at Andrew_Rotundi on Twitter. Now, you're part of the Bronx Pinstripes crew, where you also co-host Yankees podcast, which, again, available on the site as well as on Apple iTunes. So just tell us a little about yourself. How'd you become a Yankee fan, and how'd you become part of the Bronx Pinstripes crew?
Sure. So, yeah, Scott and I have been doing the podcast since the 2015 season. So this makes 5-6 years at this point. He and I just started it way back. I had been sort of with him. We had been writing BronxPinstripes.com, doing social media stuff since 2012, believe it or not. It seems like so long ago that it started, and it just sort of evolved. And over the years, we've just brought on more people, some writers, some social media people, other podcasters. Really, we all have the same thing in common that you do. We all just love the Yankees and want to talk about it.
Yeah, and as like you guys are like all over the place. So like anytime I open up Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I mean, you guys like all over. It's just like it's like you're like a whole media group. And like I said, you guys have been around for a couple of years, and you have quite a large team. So it's just like, it just seems like you guys are just pretty much everywhere.
I guess so. I mean, there's everywhere on the internet. We used to be everywhere at the stadium, and now we can't go to the stadium, which is disappointing. One of the best things I think about Bronx Pinstripes is we do live events, and over the past 3 years, we've done 4 to 6 events per year at the stadium. We get 300-400 people at these things. At the playoff game against the Twins last year, we had over 500 people out in right field, section 205, 206. And we can't do that this year, and that stinks because obviously of what's going on. So that's the most disappointing thing for 2020 for me.
So, I mean, how did you fall into the world of the Yankees? Was it family related, or is this
Of course. Isn't it always? Don't you just root for the team that your dad or your grandfather roots for? I guess if you're a little ass kid, you can root against the team that your dad roots for. But yeah, my dad's a huge Yankees fan. His dad was a big Yankees fan. I'm actually from Rhode Island, so you would think that would be Red Sox territory, and technically it is, but there's a good amount of Yankee fans in Rhode Island. My grandfather, who's an Italian immigrant, was a huge Joe DiMaggio fan. That was his guy. So that's where the Yankee fandom started in my family.
Yeah, because I've heard some again, but I've heard plenty of opposite stories where like a lot of times the son wants to become, to stick it to the father for some reason.
That's just bad parenting.
Yeah, probably. In the 80s, obviously the Mets were ruling the city, and it could have very easily gotten attracted by the wealth and power of a couple of, at least the 86 championship. But yeah, I at least stuck with the Yankees, even though at that, they were kind of in the bottom of the basement at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of people born, like you just said, grew up in the 80s. And if they did not have influence from parents or family, they would have gone with the Mets. And it was understandable. The Mets were the much more exciting team in the 80s. It just seemed like everything went wrong for the Yankees in the 80s.
Yeah. But funny thing about that, I read, the Billy Martin book that came out a couple of years ago. And they analyzed, a couple of those, a couple of years, like it was like 85, 87, 83, where around that time period where a couple of times they won 90 plus games, where like today you'd be a wild card team. But back then we only had this American League National, or you just had basically East and West, and 95 wins wasn't good enough. Where if you had some of those teams, maybe in these days we have like a million now wild card spots open, probably they would have taken a couple of trips in the 80s, but this goes to show,
Yeah, what do you prefer? Do you prefer it where if you win 90 games, you can get in a wild card spot, or do you think it should just be division winners?
I think it's better for the game to have more involved. Now, I don't want it too involved. Like basically, what they're doing this season, and I understand why they're doing it because it's a short season, so they just want more teams involved, and they figure, and also they're trying to compensate the players because I think since they only they're getting they're only getting paid for like 60 games, so I think they figure, all right, let's stretch it out a little more, let's get more teams involved in the playoffs, and so I think they're doing that really just to give the players a few extra bucks to line their pockets up, just because we're in this weird situation. But normally, I don't like the idea that like you got like 30 teams and then 16 of them, more than half, make the playoffs. Moving forward, I don't like that. I think should have more teams involved, but not too many, because I think it just waters down the league and it waters down your regular season.
Well, that's the thing that baseball needs to decide what it wants to do. Do they want to just get more teams in the playoffs? If that's the case, shorten the regular season and make the playoffs longer and really go all in with that. Or do you want to still make the regular season the most important thing, and in which case you can't expand the playoffs? So it's kind of feels like baseball wants to have it both ways. And you're not going to get people caring about 100. People already don't care that much about 162 games. I mean, diehard fans do, but the casual fan doesn't care about 162 games. And if now more than half the teams make the playoffs, well, then people really aren't going to care, because what's the point of worrying about an August 12th game against Kansas City when you can finish 500 or even below 500 and make a wild card spot?
Yeah. I always side with, like, I think once in a while it's good to have a team like the 2006 Cardinals that, like, barely, I think it was like one game on the.
They were 500. I think they were 500 exactly. Yeah, and
so
they won the World Series. But
if it happens once in a while,
yeah, people use those examples, and it's always like, okay, well, it happens once every 20 years. You can't really call that the rule. That's the exception.
Yeah, like I would same thing. I would like if that happens once, I'm okay with it. But it's like I don't like if that. But if you have, I feel like if you keep moving forward in this direction where you have like more than half the teams involved in the playoffs, you're gonna have more of those situations where someone's gonna get hot, like and like a young minor league, a 22-year-old comes out of nowhere, like a Josh Beckett back in the Marlins back in like 2003, and it's like throws gems. Meanwhile, you had a team that was really great for 5 months, and he's got this like rookie that came out of nowhere in August. Also, now that brings you to a championship. I just think it hurts the game in the long run.
I see both sides of the argument, because on the flip side, you can say, well, it helps those teams that otherwise would not have a chance. So maybe collectively that brings more people to watch baseball. And I understand that. I just come back to, you have to pick one or the other. You have to de-emphasize. If you're de-emphasizing the regular season, then you have to make it shorter, because then it's just, what are we doing with over 162? It frankly doesn't matter if you're just bringing in over half the teams in the league. Just make the playoffs an extra full round, or even 2 extra full rounds if you're going to do it that way. So I would like baseball to sort of stop being on the fence about things and make a decision one way or the other. That's
true. And ultimately, I think also weather may take a part in it as well, because it's still like obviously this season a little different, but even in April or May it's kind of freezing. So maybe go back to maybe 154 like they had back in the in the 50s and 60s. Maybe start a late. Since they start in April, maybe just start it in May, middle May, just so, because April, I mean, at the Yankee Stadium, I'm sure you experienced it well. It's freezing, it's raining, it's miserable. No one wants to go. No one's really into it yet, because people are still in like basketball mode or hockey mode a little bit, and like the stands are empty. So if anything, maybe shorten it. And I say maybe just start a little later and start in May when at least it's finally warm.
Opening day was supposed to be March 26th this year. I mean, it very regularly snows on March 26th. So yeah, I think it's way too early. Yeah, I'm with you. If you shorten it to 154 or 144, and hey, even add a couple double headers in the middle of the summer, like these 7-inning things, I don't know if I like them or not, but I could see baseball adding like one of these or two of these a month to not shorten the amount of games, but condense the time in which the season takes. So you could start it like back in the old day when they used to start April 16th, and then run it through September, and then playoffs in October.
Just before the official trade line, they have Davy Garcia make his debut against the Mets, kind of a big spot, and he pitches an absolute gem. Just what do you think, moving forward? You think that someone, if we see like Happ being up and down a little bit and Paxton kind of being out, you think they kind of slide him in there into the rotation, or is that someone that you think they might just want to keep in the bullpen just to have a strong arm just come out of there and just like blow someone away for one inning?
Well, I hope they use him in the rotation. He looked awesome, and he has been a starter all throughout the minor leagues. I think they could use him because they have so many games. They only have one off day for the rest of the season. You're going to have games to use extra starters. So, of course, use Devi Garcia. You could use 6 starters for the next 2 weeks because you don't have any off days and you have to play double headers.
Yeah, and getting back, just getting back to Paxton and talking about the rotation with him. I thought, again, someone like him could have been a great number 2 starter for the Yankees, but obviously he's get off to a bad start. He's, supposed to come back from his injury. Do you think it's a situation where if he comes back and if he's just mediocre to okay, they say, you know what, in the free agency, goodbye, thank you for your year and a half, or is that someone you think they want to keep in their long-term plans?
I don't want any part of signing James Paxton. He's injured every year. Like, why are you going to lock yourself into? It's going to be a big contract because it's Scott Boras. So you're not going to get him on the cheap. So you're going to sign this guy to 4+ years, and you're going to deal with his injuries over time. He's not good enough to deal with those kind of injuries. Like, he's not bad. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's not good enough to deal with all those injury problems. So if I were the Yankees, I would not even entertain bringing him back. I think his career high in innings is like 158, or it's like right around 160 innings is his career high. That's just not someone you pay $100+ million for. It's just, I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's like, okay, if he's gonna sign a short-term cheap deal, which he's not going to, but if you can get him for 2 years, fine, of course, bring him back. But you're not going to do that. So I think when the Yankees are looking at it, they have Tanaka and Paxton as free agents. Both of them scare me because Tanaka hasn't really looked great and he hasn't looked healthy. And at least his what I mean is his fastball's down even more than it was in previous years. So I just think he's aging. And you have Paxton, but at least with Tanaka, you can envision a scenario where he comes back on a short-term deal because he's already made big money. Paxton's looking for big money. He's never made big money. So he's going to want multi-year deal. And I think it's just too risky when you already have so many. This team is so injury prone. I mean, you can't add another guy who's injury prone to this already injury prone team. It's just too much.
No, and it's actually a great point on Tanaka and Paxton, with those two. Of the two, yeah, I'd rather them keep, if they can only pick one, I'd rather them keep Tanaka over Paxton, definitely, even though, again, Tanaka, again, his regular season always up and up, but like at least for the playoffs when we've seen he's pretty much sure-handed there. So I'd rather have that Paxton. Again, it could be, I'd just rather take Paxton off too. So one of the bright spots for the Yankees this season, again, it was actually able to stay healthy, has been Luke Voit, pretty much hits a home run every game. Yeah. But, moving to the playoffs though, first base, I don't trust him there. I love his bat. He's hitting great this season, but if it's between him and someone else at first base, I'd rather have someone else. I just don't trust Voigt's defense.
Well, he's offensively, he's so good right now that you can suffer through some bad defense. But yeah, he's a bad first baseman. So Mike Ford's not a good first baseman either. So like, what is their ideal infield lineup though? Because the only other person that you would put at first base is LeMahieu. But if you put LeMahieu at first base, you sacrifice his defense because he's such a good second baseman. So I could see them in a late inning scenario. If they have a lead, you put LeMahieu at first, Tyler Wade at second. That at least gives you solid defense on that side, but you're not going to start LeMahieu. You have to start Luke Voit with the way he's hitting.
No, that's a good point. You could start and then maybe the 7th inning, then you could play around a little bit, like you said, shift LeMahieu to first and then have Tyler Wade. Hopefully at that point you have a lead in the bullpen, which usually the Yankees bullpen is pretty good, does their job. And then, again, you could lose Voigt's bat in later innings. So, that is an excellent point.
Yeah, I think defense is a real concern for them because we just talked about their struggles defensively at first base. Glaber's looked bad at shortstop, and I know he's hurt right now, but whenever he comes back, like he's only an average at best shortstop. And then at third base, Gio's been good, but people I think overrate his defense. I think he's good. He's not Gold Glove like Matt Chapman or anything. He's good, and he's far and away better than Andujar. But so it's like I think their infield defense is okay. But if you don't have LeMahieu at second base, I think you really sacrifice your up the middle defense because he's their best defender in the infield.
No, I totally agree. And again, I think the Yankees did take a step back defensively, letting Didi go. But I understood that. They were much stronger up the middle with Didi at short, Glaber at second. But yeah, you kind of lose a little bit by losing Didi. But getting to one of the players you just mentioned, though, Andahar, it's kind of an enigma because like you have this great hitter, but it's like, what do you do with him? Where you put him? He's just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, and you might disagree with me. I don't think he's a great hitter. I don't think he's a hitter that you can trust because he doesn't take any pitches. He swings at everything. And unfortunately, in today's game, that's not sustainable. Maybe in 2000, that's sustainable, but it's not in today's game with all the infield shifts and with the way that baseball is constructed. People are just looking to launch angle. DJ LeMahieu is like an aberration. He's a guy that they don't shift on. He can hit the ball all over the field, and he hits line drives, so he gets a lot of hits. But he's also a more disciplined hitter than Miguel Andujar. So I'm not saying Andujar is bad, but I think we've seen the peak of what he can be in 2018. And unfortunately, right now he has no trade value because he can't play defense. And other teams know that he's not valuable to the Yankees because he's just a DH. And they have like 7 DHs. So he's got no value, and it sucks because I feel bad for him because I liked him as a rookie. But he just got Wally pipped at third base by Gio, and he's way behind on the depth chart at DH. And so I don't know what his value could possibly be. Like people are talking about at the trade deadline, oh, trade Andujar for Mike Clevenger. That's not going to get it done. That's not even close to getting it done. Andujar is like a secondary or a third piece in a prospect deal that you trade to a team that you can say, okay, you're getting Clark Schmidt, plus you're getting Andujar, who might turn back into second in Rookie of the Year Miguel Andujar. You're not getting Miguel Andujar as the centerpiece.
That's a great point. And, if the Yankees do ship someone out, let's say that the difference between Frazier and Andujar, I'd rather keep Frazier and,
Definitely.
send Andujar back. And I think Frazier, next year, I think he'll get a shot. I don't think Gardner's going to come back. Even though the problem is with Hicks, though, like Gardner, can play center field, but like with Hicks, like, we're stuck with him for another 5 years, but he's like never around, or he's around for a couple of days and he's gone for a few days.
He's another injury prone guy. It's just so many injury prone guys. It makes it really tough for projecting the next year or two. It makes it tough because you have to build in injuries. You have to build in injuries with Judge, Stanton, and Hicks. Like you just do. So I think if you go into next year with an outfield of Judge, Hicks, Talkman, Frazier, I think that's what they would do. And I don't see Gardner coming back because I think he's done. He just doesn't look good at the plate. And I think it's you have to decide, are we going to give Frazier a chance or are we going to get rid of him? And he's proving right now he can hit. So I think you have to give him the chance next year. Like this is the time. You can't keep delaying it. He's going to be 20. I believe he's going to be 26 next year. I'm not sure if he's going to be 25 or 26. But you got to make a decision on Clint Frazier at this point. And in my opinion, he's better than Gardner right now. He's more valuable than Gardner right now. He's not a better defender, but he's a much better hitter. So I think if you're looking at it that way, you got to give Clint the shot. And he's, I don't know, I've liked what he's done this year. I think he's been good.
Yeah, and improved defensively as well. Like I was saying before the season started, I would just hold my breath out there. Still a little bit, but not as much. I mean, he's tracking the ball a little better. So he's not as much of a liability. And I think, as years go on, he'll get better and better. And he never gotten a full shot. He's always up for 2 weeks, and then they send him down. He's up for 2 weeks. Like, he deserved that opportunity to get like a full run of just don't have to look over your shoulder. It's your job. And all he does when they bring up it, he just hits home runs and hits line drives all over the place. And then they send him down like 3 days later.
If Brett Gardner was still the 350 on base percentage guy, then I would say you got to ride Brett Gardner until he's fully done. But he's not. He's not getting on base, and he hits the occasional home run. But does this team need more home runs? Like they're good on the home runs. Everyone can hit home runs. We don't need Brett Gardner hitting home runs too.
Another one, the walk-in wounded for the Yankees, of course, the biggest name of all, of course, Giancarlo Stanton. Again, this
though? Is it, or is Aaron Judge the biggest name who's always injured? Because I think it's Aaron Judge.
No, you're probably right there. But I just think in terms of this, the money and
yeah.
See, I think the problem with Stanton is like we don't have to give up much to get him, so it's like great, but he clogs up the pipes. He clogs up Frazier getting an opportunity, clogs up someone like Ando. So it's like, okay, if you're in there, great, but play. But now we have you, but we can't do anything with you because we're stuck with you for the next like 7 years. And I think he wants to come back and good. I don't think he's like an Ellsbury or a Carl Pavano who just kind of casual, don't really care about coming back. But it's like, I don't know. Do you see this guy finishing out his contract in the Yankee Pinstripes, or they just try to find let's get a way to get rid of this guy eventually?
No one's gonna take him. He's too expensive to get rid of. Unfortunately, when he's healthy, when is he ever healthy? Like we saw him. We saw him. He was good. So in the first 3 weeks of the season, he was good. So there's that. Like if he's on the field, you can trust he's gonna be good. It's just he can't get on the field. So that sucks. You're right. You're 100% right. He clogs up the roster, unfortunately, because he's just a DH and he's cost $30 million a year. That's not a good position to have when you much rather have Judge long term because he's a homegrown guy, and you're going to want to get Judge some more time at DH to keep him healthier. So they're really in a tough spot with those two guys where they're essentially just two of the same type of player. Big outfielders who are injured all the time, who are, when they are on the field, they're really good. So enjoy it while they're on the field, but just know at any given time, Judge is going to be out for a month. Stanton's going to be out for a month. That's just the reality. And that's the reality that Brian Cashman signed up for when he took on that contract.
I agree. And also I think what helps with Judge, like I said before, he's the homegrown guy. He's kind of like our Jeter of this, decade. So I think fans will give him a little more leniency than they would Stanton. Like Stanton's like the A-Rod, even though he doesn't have the attitude of an A-Rod, but he's kind of like the A-Rod, and Judge is kind of like the homegrown. So I think fans have a little more patience with Judge. But
what might happen is Stanton's contract might prevent the Yankees from signing Aaron Judge to a long-term contract, which would suck, but it might be the reality.
Going to Sanchez, just touching about him from, starting the season, they said, all right, great. His defense improved a little bit, which it was, and Cole was raving about him. But past couple of weeks, he just, really seen a little bit of a decline. He's kind of going back to his old habits. He's not blocking the plate. He's kind of reaching over instead of blocking the plate, and it just looks a little sloppy there. And I mean, what is it with this guy? Is he a head case, or just doesn't care? Has a bad attitude? I mean, what is it with him?
Yeah. I mean, I do think he cares, but I think, he's one of these guys that when one thing goes wrong, it spirals so quickly for him. And before you know it, he's got 4 pass balls in a 3-game series. He swings at everything in the dirt. He looks terrible at the plate. And then it's just like everything is magnified because he is he's a guy we all remember being the best catcher in baseball in 2016 and 2017. So we all know he can do it, but he's just not doing it. And it's frustrating. But he can be so bad at times that it honestly makes people say, should we just start Eric Kratz? Should we just start Kyle Higashioka? That's how bad Gary Sanchez can be at times. And it's extremely frustrating. I don't know what's wrong with him. I mean, he's going to hit like 130 this year. He's going to have 60 games of 130 batting average. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I just think the appeal for him, though, is that if he's on the field and going well, I mean, it gives you a clear advantage over any other team, because a lot of times you're just happy if your catcher hits 220 and just calls a good game. With him, you got to, again, what he did when he came up in 2016 through 17, a record set amount of home runs for a catcher coming up. It's like, what happened to that guy? And again, maybe it's injuries, or just maybe he's just totally lost. I don't know. I'd give him as much leash as humanly possible, because again, when he's right, he gives you a clear advantage of that no one else, very few teams have in baseball.
Yeah, he has the most home runs in baseball as a catcher since 2016, and he didn't even play a full 2016. He hasn't played a full season at all because he's always been injured, but he still has the most home runs. So that sort of tells you how good offensively as a catcher he can be.
Now we look at the season, it's kind of weird. Again, you got no fans in the stands, and just going back to that, that Mets weekend where the doubleheaders and everything, all those games were like dramatic, great. And I think for all of the season, it seems like a lot of these games are close, and not too many, like, at least for the Yankees, not many like 8-0 blowouts, 8-2, where it's like, turn off the TV in the third inning. A lot of these games have been come down the last few innings. I mean, you think there's any particular reason for that? Or you think having fans and no fans is that? I mean, or is it just, just a
Um,
coincidence?
well, I think part of it is that rosters are expanded and guys are not fully up to, like, pitchers are not fully stretched out and they're not letting them go as far. So you're seeing more pitchers. And it's kind of like I equate it to a little bit of spring training baseball. So I don't know if you've ever been to a spring training game, but by the sixth inning, it's AAA and AA and everyone's in the game. And usually, not usually, but many times, even if one team has like a 4-run lead, the other team's going to come back because it's just scrubs out there doing scrub things. And I feel like that's kind of what we're getting this year, where everyone's kind of just out there, but not 100%, not fully in their rhythm. A ton of pitchers, a ton of sloppy play. So it just seems like the games come down to being close at the end because both teams are playing sloppy. When you have all of these guys that maybe don't belong in the majors in 2020, maybe they're like a 2021 or a 2022 major league player, you just get weird things happening. I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing weird baseball because of the circumstances. I'm not sure it's good baseball, but it's weird.
It's different. I guess we'll call it 2020 baseball.
Yeah, we're gonna look back and be like, oh, remember how the Orioles were almost a playoff team, and remember how the Red Sox had the worst record in baseball, and Aaron Judge was on pace for like 50 home runs, but then he missed 3 weeks. Like, it's just weird stuff after weird stuff.
All right, so Andrew, I appreciate jumping on. Tell people where they can find you on, I guess, all the social media platforms.
Yeah, so like you said at the beginning, Bronx Pinstripes on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've got a ton of different things that we do, from events to podcasts and videos, blog content. I co-host a podcast called The Bronx Pinstripe Show with Scott Reinen. We're coming up on 500 episodes, so you can subscribe to that in iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, all those different ones. But yeah, we got a ton of stuff going on, and I appreciate you having me on. I think it's cool that the Yankees fans seem like, more than any other fans, do a lot of fan content, whether it's videos or podcasts. So I think it's kind of cool that I don't know why that is exactly, but I think it's just like Yankee fans are so passionate. They want to connect with other Yankee fans. They want to talk about the team. They don't want to just hear Michael Kay and Jack Curry talk about the Yankees. They also want to talk about the Yankees. So I think it's cool.
All right. Well, and thanks again for coming on, and check out the podcast at Yankees Podcast with Andrew and Scott. Sign up, subscribe to Bronx Pinstripes. And most importantly, root for Gary Sanchez.